Hello, Chargers fans, and welcome to another episode of Chargers Cast. We're a fan-based podcast about everything Los Angeles Chargers. I'm your host, Kirk Brewer. I am a San Diego native and been a Chargers fan since 1978. And as a longtime Chargers fan for over 4 decades, I'm here to bring you a unique perspective on our Los Angeles Chargers. Training camp has officially begun. Vets reported to camp this last Tuesday, and Harbaugh and staff did not waste any time getting to work. This also marked the grand opening of the Bolt, the brand new $250 million spectacular team facility in El Segundo. I didn't get a chance to visit it, but I got to live vicariously through hundreds of Chargers fans who shared their experiences at the Bolt on social media. My goodness, that place looks spectacular. And I just want to go there and have a pizza from Wolfgang Puck out of the Chargers helmet pizza oven. That's on my bucket list now. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk about training camp position battles. We're going to talk about the current roster and who's on it and what battles we expect in training camp to keep our eye on. But first, I'm joined by another diehard Chargers fan, Brennan Isham. Do I got that right, by the way? Is it Isham?
Close. It's Isham. Very close.
I didn't know if it was a hard eye or soft eye. It's Isham from Chargers District on Instagram. That's where Brennan and I met up. Like I've told you guys, this is a podcast by fans for fans. And I want to get more fans in here talking about our beloved Bolts. Brennan is the first one to take me up on the invitation. Welcome, Brennan. Glad to have you with us. Give me a little background. We've chatted before the pod, got to know each other a little bit. Give me a little background on yourself and what made you a diehard Chargers fan. People got my story. I'm an old timer. You're a little bit younger than me by a couple of years anyway. Little background. How'd you become a Chargers fan?
All right. So as you introduced me, my name is Brennan. I run a page on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook called Chargers District. I started about 6 months ago. But I've been a diehard Chargers fan. I grew up in the Southern California area, not too far from Quancom. And it was, my dad was a big influence on it. He was born and raised in San Diego and grew up a Chargers fan. And I started wearing little LT jerseys when I was little and kind of just grew up a huge Chargers fan and have like a major passion for the whole team now. And I feel like that's like a big part of my life is this LA Chargers.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir. I've been to many games. I've been to many training camps throughout my whole life, and I just love being part of the Bolt fam.
It's a special family, and as I can tell you from being a fan for literally 40 plus years, it's not for the faint of heart. We have our periods where we're an excellent team, and then we've had these periods like decades where we're just, it's horrible and it's just miserable to weather the storm. We've been very fortunate in recent years for a lot of younger fans to go from Doug Flutie to Drew Brees to 16 years of Phillip Rivers and then now to Justin Herbert, where at least the quarterback position, which is critical in the NFL, we've been blessed to have quality quarterbacks. And then without belaboring it too much, because the pod has started coincidentally with the coaching change, I think we finally have a coach who's going to be able to utilize this talent and maybe, fingers crossed with his track record, turn us into a contender once again. So without further ado, man, glad to have you here. Glad to be hanging out, talking ball with you. Before we get started, there's a tradition I think I'm about ready to get started here with Chargers Cast, and that is my throat gets dry talking for 45 minutes or an hour, and I can choose which beverage. I tend to liquidate my vocal cords. And today I've got a Paulaner Munchen original Munich lager, straight out of Munich. And that's my beverage of choice today while we talk about the Chargers. So let me get this bad boy opened. It's always got to be ice cold. That's beautiful. Oh. All right, man. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's get right into it.
All right, let's go. Let's start with the offense, Brennan. I think that's a good place to start for several reasons. Number one, like quarterback, that's an easy one. Let's start at quarterback. Okay. We got Justin, we got Easton Stick, we got Max Duggan. There's no battles. Okay. Easton's lucky to be backing up Justin. He wasn't going to get a better gig anywhere else in the NFL. Justin's just starting to hit his stride as far as that big contract he signed, where he's really starting to hit our cap now. And then I think Max is still an unknown commodity, but I think there's something there with that kid too. But no battles, Justin's got the gold jersey. Harbaugh's quirky dude, man. Throws him in a gold jersey. What do you think about our quarterback room, Brennan?
So, as you said, he's wearing the gold jersey for a reason. He's our golden boy, Justin Herbert. Unless a freak, knock on wood, unless something happens again, he's going to be our starter for a very long time. But I do think there is going to be a very interesting battle for the QB2. So I've been watching a lot of Mic'd Ups on Instagram and the Chargers website, and I've been seeing Harbaugh working with Max Duggan a lot and trying to develop him as a QB. As a former QB himself, I feel that's very beneficial. And the clips I've been seeing in training camp, he seems a little more consistent and a little less timid. And from Easton Stick's side of the field, I feel like he's making a lot of underthrows, maybe getting a little too comfortable in my opinion. But I think that is definitely something to watch during the preseason, because I think it's going to be a little closer than people think when it comes to the QB2 position.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I wouldn't have necessarily thought that. I've kind of perceived what Harbaugh's doing with Max is kind of like you touched on. We're one really bad hit away from number 2 becoming number 1, and number 3 now being the backup and one hit away from starting. And so Harbaugh's kind of investing in Max to make sure that if the worst did happen, we've still got, some competitive quarterback play. And then, with Easton getting the experience he got after, Justin went down, he's finally got a little bit of live reps, some live fire that I think will serve him well. It's a hard position to be a backup quarterback. It's you don't get all the reps, you don't get all that, and then the worst happens and you're thrown into the fire. So it'll be interesting to watch. I'm going to keep an eye from that perspective. If it looks like Max has a chance to maybe supplant Easton. I know Easton's been there a while. Easton actually goes back to Rivers. He got to work with Phillip. Justin never did, and I was really bummed about that. I really thought 1 year under Rivers would have helped Justin tremendously, learning how to read blitz packages and things. But Easton had a little bit of that experience, and I think Justin really trusts him as a person to bounce things off of when he comes back to the sideline after a series. So it'll be an interesting dynamic to watch. I'll keep my eye on that. Let's roll into the running backs. This interesting dynamic here. I don't know how much is a battle per se, but we brought in Gus Bradley, J.K. Dobbins. I really like this J.K. kid. If he can stay healthy, I think he's incredible. We've got C.J. Spiller, which I don't think he's ever been really given a shot to prove what he's capable of, which is really a shame. I was really high on him when we brought him in as a rook. I think he's season 3 now for him. Then we've got this kid, Kamani Vidal. He was 4th rounder. The guy's built like a freaking fire hydrant, man. He's like 5'3" or 4 or something, and 220 pounds or just something crazy. And then we still have that kid, Elijah Dotson. Very intriguing back. That guy broke last preseason. He broke a couple long runs to the outside. I don't know if you remember those, but he flashed. He flashed sideline to sideline speed and being able to turn it up and turn on the burners. And so it's almost like he's an afterthought to these other 4 dudes, but I don't know. I think there's maybe a little bit more that's going to be taking place between those last 3. We know Gus is a lock. We know JK is a lock. What are your takes on this room? I think we're fortunate to have the depth that we have there.
Yeah, I think you honestly said it really well. It's not necessarily a battle, but it's a very interesting RB room, in my opinion, because you got 2 RBs that are probably running back 1 and 2 in the room as of right now, and they were on the same team for many years, so they have the chemistry, and they're 2 completely different backs. One's a little more elusive and will take that hole where Gus the Bus is just going to run straight through that, and as of recently, he's been making 4 to 5 yards per carry, and so I feel like that's going to complement each other very, very well. And then the other backs, like I said, I feel like it's a really toss-up on what's going to happen, but Vidal, I really like him coming out of Troy. He was, I feel like, a little bit under the radar, not someone that's going to be supposed to break out necessarily like a Blake Corum. However, I feel like he can definitely show what he's got during the preseason and solidify him as the RB3, maybe get 1 or 2 reps per game. And then, like you said, Elijah Dotson, I really like him. Last year during the preseason, like you said, there was it almost seemed like every highlight was about him during those games because each handoff he had, he was taking it like 40 yards each time. And he had 1 breakout touchdown that I really think solidified him on the Chargers. So who knows? It could take him maybe 2 or 3 years to solidify him as a true Chargers RB. But I think he definitely, like you said, someone to fall back on. But it's a very viable option for us because I think he has some stuff to prove. And then lastly, Isaiah Spiller, I feel like he's just kind of there in my opinion. He's a little bigger. I feel like he can run, get some good yardage for us. However, like I said, there are a lot of intriguing backs that we already have, so it's gonna be interesting to see where he fits in the room as well.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see how it shakes out because obviously Gus and JK, they're familiar with the scheme already under Giro, right? So that's a done deal. Okay, those guys are running backs 1A and 1B. Done.
Yep.
And I really hope JK, the guy is so cool. I don't know if you've seen interviews with him, but he's just got the best personality. He's got a tremendous outlook, and he's here to prove, hey, I want that next contract. I'm going to stay healthy. I hope he does, because if he does, we've got a stud that I think he would want to stay here with Giro, with Harbaugh, and so he's not going to necessarily look to break the bank to get that next contract. But then, like Spiller, I see Spiller fitting the mold of this offense, which is going to be a ground and pound, smack you in the face. He's a bigger back, but he's still got speed. And, of course, Kamani, that kid, he's so low that, you've got this offensive line of 6'4" and higher dudes. These linebackers aren't going to know where he's going until he busts through the hole and then just smacks him right in the chest because he's going to be so low and so strong. That kid could be really special. And then if you want your change of pace guy, I think that's maybe where Elijah comes in. So it's going to be those 3 guys, we know the top 2. It's going to be interesting to see what reps those three guys got. And there's just something about Elijah, man. Watching him last season, he's got a little wiggle to him. I was really disappointed that he didn't get more reps in the regular season last year. But then there's a lot of things I was disappointed about, and that's why we had a full house cleaning of the whole regime. So let's move on to the offensive line, man. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. The top tier guys, I think we know who they are, right? Tackles. Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, bookends. I would just say get used to seeing those guys for the next 10 years. Those guys are going to be each tackle position next 10 years. Slater, Alt, and Herbert's back there just kicking the snot out of our opponents, okay? But we've got some interesting depth there. Remember, we signed Alex Leatherwood, which is a former first-round pick of the Raiders, but he was kind of a bust. But we signed him, and so maybe they can develop something with that guy. I mean, he had the talent enough to be a first-round pick. And then we got Sorrell, and we got Pipkins as far as tackle backup. And I guess we could throw Salyer in there, too, because he played tackle in college. And then remember when Rashawn went down 2 years ago as a rookie, Salyer came in and held the left side down kind of like a stud. He didn't kind of skip a beat other than he was a rook. So I think we've got some good depth there. And then on the guard side, Pip's moving in right now is the way it looks. He's moving in to be right guard. And then Zion, I didn't think that dude could get bigger. That dude just is like built. I would hate to fight that dude in the interior line. He is just massive. So we've got Zion and Pip as our starting left and right guards. And then we've got Salyer, Hamas, and McFadden. Don't know a lot about McFadden. Heard some rumors out of camp about McFadden. I don't know if you heard those rumors that they're playing him around at fullback, which is crazy. And then Bradley Bozeman is slated to be our starting center, and backup is a young guy by the name of Lang. Don't know a lot about him. What are your thoughts on these guys? I think our top five are locked in right now. It's really going to be who's shaping out to be backup.
Yeah, so I agree. I think it's going to be the top five easily. Actually, a little thing about they are really putting a lot of faith in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. In training camp, as of right now, they are giving Herbert 8 seconds to throw. So they are anticipating them being literal brick walls for Herbert and him having more time. So that's an interesting thing to see if they can actually do that, because we're putting so much reps into that 8 seconds. Hopefully they can do exactly what the game plan was and give Herbert as much possible time. So I think they're studs. I think they're going to be O-line duo that you hear a lot out of throughout the season. And then Alex Leatherwood is very interesting to me. So we've seen a lot of players throughout the NFL really become great players later on. We've seen them just become role players, but later on. So maybe he just needs to blossom. Maybe the Raiders just wasn't a great franchise to really blossom his game. So who knows? Jim Harbaugh, one of his favorite positions is the O-line. He actually calls O-line a skilled position. And so who knows? I think he could really give Alex Leatherwood the tools to succeed. And then the other guys like Jameer Slayer, I think he's going to shock a lot of people as well, because he was getting a lot of reps as of last year. And I think him and I think it is Pipkins, right? I think they are going to either share the reps, or one of them is going to shine during the early of the season and really develop into that starter. I think it's really close in between them because they're both showing signs of becoming really good O linemen. But like you said, I think the top five is easily the center as well, Bradley Bozeman. He's a lock. I think they've been working with him really well to give Herbert what he needs, on the line. I think him and Herbert have actually been, it seems like with all of the videos I've been watching, him and Herbert have been really gaining a great relationship with each other and gaining respect. So, and that's the center and the quarterback are one of those best duos. If they don't go well with each other, then that's not going to go well. A lot of drop balls, a lot of miscues. So I think he's going to be a good fit for us. The O-line, I feel like, is going to be a way huge step up. Kind of like I think we're going to be somewhere to look at when it comes to the O-line, as regarded as one of the best O-lines in the NFL in the next coming of years, if we're keeping the steady pace of getting better.
Yeah, well, and it's cool that Harbaugh actually sees the O-line as weapons, right? I mean, how badass is that? It's always been my philosophy, and it's always frustrated me being a fan of football for over 40 years. And everybody likes the glamour part, right? The deep bombs and all of that. But the reality is, it's still a game of chess that's won in the trenches. And if you don't control both the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage, the rest of it just doesn't matter. And Harbaugh, being a quarterback, right? He knows better than anybody. You can't throw it. You can't run it. You're going to get sacked. You're going to be running for your life. The lines are paramount. And so it's so refreshing to have a guy like him come in who's an offensive guy playing quarterback. He wasn't a lineman, right? He's a quarterback, putting the emphasis on the line. And so, Bozeman played under Giro. He understands what Giro wants, right? He wants to go downhill on opponents. It looks like we've got some pretty good depth, which is really cool. We pretty much know who those starting five are going to be, but Salyer, he's gotten some great reps at tackle. Yeah, he's got some great reps at guard. And Hamas has played. McFadden, he's going to be an interesting one. They really seem high on this guy, right? That he can kind of do it all. They're talking about having him play like tight end and be like that sixth lineman on the end. So watch out for that dude. He's 300 and some odd pounds, but supposedly he's light on his feet. I'm really, really optimistic about our line because they're going to do everything, right? They're going to free up the backs and they're going to free up Herbert.
Yeah. McFadden is a very interesting one, like you said, because I don't think a lot of people realize there was a couple plays last year where he lined up as fullback, and there was one play where he did take it down the middle. So he already has a couple reps with lining up as the fullback. And like you said, he is a big boy. They're already going to have problems with Gus. So if you add McFadden on there as well, that's going to really be what Harbaugh's looking for, just to be bullies, smash mouth football. So I think he's going to be if they use him right, it's going to be very cool and interesting to see him on the field lining up as fullback.
Well, and Harbaugh and Giro like to play as many linemen as they can. So don't be surprised if we see numerous sets per game of 6 offensive linemen. And it sounds like McFadden might be that extra dude on either side of the line when they're going to that personnel package. So, yeah, the running game, smash mouth football, gets me excited. I go back to the Natron Means days, and of course, Marty Schottenheimer and LT, power right, power left, power, and just pounding people. So that's going to be a blast, which is a perfect segue to the next position group, which is tight ends. Okay. We haven't completely remade that room, but it's definitely got a new face. Okay. We brought in Will Dissly from Seattle. We brought in Hayden Hurst from Carolina, but he's actually a former Raven. He was drafted, I think he's a second rounder, if I'm not mistaken, by the Ravens. And then we still got Parham at 6 foot gazillion, like 8 or 9. And then Stone Smart, which is he's very athletic. He's a former college quarterback that they converted to tight end. He's shown some flashes, but right now, and then I think we've got a couple camp bodies that are also filling out that position, which, I think the only one that's kind of intriguing is this kid out of South Dakota State, Zach Hines. He's 6'7", 260 pounds. They say he's pretty athletic for his size, but I think those 4 guys are going to, unless this Zach kid really flashes, I think that room, and Hayden Hurst, I'm really interested to see what he can become. He's familiar with this system too, and he said it was what drew him to the Chargers, is because he knows Giro wants to smack people in the mouth for 60 minutes, if not longer. And he's down with that, like all day long and twice on Sundays. And if he gets to catch a few balls, that's even better. But he's just fine smacking people around all day. Yeah. What are your thoughts on our tight end room, man?
So I am a huge fan of Donald Parham. I think he is better than what he's, I guess, shown and in the public eye. There's many games that I have rewatched, and there's been many times where he scored 2 touchdowns in the game, and he seems like he has really good chemistry with Herbert. And like you said, he's about 6'7". There's been multiple times where Herbert just throws it up and he catches it. He has really good hands, and he is pretty athletic. So I think he's someone to watch out for again, because I think he's very reliable as a tight end. And then Will Dissly, I think he's going to be the perfect tight end for our scheme with, like we said earlier, smash mouth football. He is one of the graded, I don't know the exact number, but graded, he is one of the best blocking tight ends in the league as of recent years. So he's going to really be able to protect and complement that O-line and protect Herbert. So I think he's a really good addition. And he can catch as well. There's been a couple highlights I've seen with him from the Seahawks that I was very impressed. He can move as big as he is. And obviously Hayden Hurst, he's, as a Chargers fan, I don't know if you remember, but during that 2018 season when he was on their team, it was we played them one of the last games of the season, and then we played them in the wild card. And I remember Hayden Hurst was giving us a very hard time. So he can really, really book it up the field as a tight end. That's very, I think, useful, because being able to be as athletic as a tight end, that's just very useful in the league, how it is as of right now. And he can complement Will Dissly, 2 different tight ends, but I think they will be able to be very useful on the field. And I think Hayden Hurst is going to be a very good desperation weapon for Herbert. I think he's going to be able to get open when no one else can, and take a little bit of the pressure off of the other receivers and other tight ends. So I think I'm really excited to see Hayden Hurst play.
Yeah, I think our tight end room has become a strength. Dissly fits what we want to do to a T. He's known as that. I think he's like the number 1 blocking tight end. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but if he's not, he's like top 3, right? Yeah. But I believe he's the number 1 blocking tight end in the league, which we've needed for years, because Donald is not, nor was Gerald Everett, nor was the guy before him,
Jared
Cook, and I like Cook. He's a good receiving tight end, big boy. He did more than Everett ever did. He was more dynamic than Everett in his twilight years, but Dissly is going to be like that seventh offensive lineman, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which we need big time. But he actually is a serviceable pass catcher.
Yep.
And Hayden Hurst reminds me of George Kittle. He's really athletic. He's really aggressive. He's faster than he looks. He doesn't shy away from contact. So he and Dissly are really going to counter each other. And then, Parham, you nailed it, right? He's always been that red zone threat.
Yep.
Within 10, 15 yards of the end zone, he's just like stands out. It's like going to be like him and Joe Alt are going to be like head and shoulders above everybody else on the field. So really excited about this room because I think tight ends fit this scheme more than wide receivers.
Yep.
Not that wide receivers aren't necessary, but I believe tight ends really serve the scheme better because of their blocking capability and their pass catching capability. Which leads me to wide receiver. I saved wide receivers for last on the offense for an obvious reason.
The best and most interesting
with
the offense.
Keenan gone, Mike gone. All of the fanboys were out there crying for Malik Nabers. And I'm like, you guys don't understand, okay? You are not looking at Harbaugh in his history. Okay, he's not taking that dude unless he's like forced to, or if he could trade back and take that guy, he's not. He's just not who Harbaugh, it's not what Harbaugh's recipe is, and it's definitely not what Giro's recipe is. So we've got a really intriguing room, and there's definitely going to be some battles because there's going to be some odd men out. They don't have enough spots for all of the guys. I think you and I, when we go down the list, are going to be like, well, I want that guy, and I want that guy, and I want that guy. So let me run through the guys who I think are locks. Joshua Palmer, QJ, DJ Chark, Ladd McConkey. I think those are locks. Where there's going to be some battles are Darius Davis, which we can talk about him because I think he's an outlier to that. Semi Fehoko, Brandon Rice, and Cornelius Johnson. What's your take on these guys, man?
So I was waiting this whole time so far to talk about these wide receivers.
I know.
Probably the most juiciest of the offense right now. So just start from the top. I do agree those are easy locks. Joshua Palmer, I think, is going to be the top guy. Based off the fact that this is, I think, is going to be his fourth year. And he's been behind Keenan. He's been behind Mike Williams. He's been behind all of these veteran wide receivers where he's learning so much from them. And there's been games where Keenan and Mike have been out, and he's taken the helm, and he has actually not done a really terrible job at all. He's done a very good job of holding the reins down for Herbert. So I think him realizing that he needs to step up to that position, I think he's going to be a good wide receiver one for us. I think Ladd McConkey, I'm really high on this guy. He's going to be very good in my opinion. I just reposted a route that he did, and completely nasty. Super, super great route. Yeah, it was. Yep. So it was out of the ordinary for me to see that already for a rookie, and it's not even, we are still a couple weeks out from preseason. So I think he's going to develop into a really good slot wide receiver 2. And then QJ, wide receiver 3. I think he's going to doubt a lot of people this season, become a little more consistent than he was. I think he's got him maybe about 1 or 2 more years until a breakout season. But I think he's going to shock people with the consistency that he's shown, because he's really, in interviews, has been emphasizing that he's working very hard and really locking in to get that wide receiver position that he believes he deserves. And then Darius Davis, I think he is the outlier. The new kickoff, I think, was a huge factor with that. We drafted him with a big purpose of him being a kick and punt returner. As you've seen last season, he did return a couple, so he does have that ability. And with the new kickoff scheme, I think he's a lock no matter what, because we don't really have any good punt or kick returners that stand out other than him. He's very fast, and I think he's very intelligent on the field with the gaps and the holes on kickoffs and punt returns. And then, of course, I think Brendan Rice is going to be a good pick. I just don't. I feel like with the genetics, you cannot go wrong having a dad like Jerry Rice. It's just, I feel like it is going to be hard to fill those footsteps or fill those shoes. However, I think he's going to develop. I think he might be practice squad this season, but I think he's going to develop into a really good wide receiver for us. And then Simi and Cornelius Johnson, I like them as players. I do think they both have upsides, especially Cornelius Johnson being with his coach, his previous coach, and having being a rookie. We don't know what he's gonna do, so I think he's a little in the open air. But I think, personally for me, I think the locks are gonna be QJ, Joshua Palmer, Ladd McConkey, Darius Davis, and DJ Chark. DJ Chark, I didn't say anything about him yet, but he's been very, very consistent with where he's been. I feel like he's going to be one of the big, deep threats for Herbert. And I think he's got hands. If you saw him in Carolina or even on the Lions, and of course the Jaguars, he's been able to produce those, oh my gosh, types of catches and TD runs. So I think he's going to be kind of like a dark horse when it comes to producing big numbers.
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of play action this season, right? We're going to be throwing off the run, and he's going to be one of those guys, he's a 4-3, high 4-3, like 4-3-8 guy, that can take the top off the defense, and he does have good hands.
Yeah.
McConkey, he could be a punt and kick returner, but I don't think we want to subject him to that. Right, he's a 4-3, mid 4-3s guy as well. He could take the top off the defense. He's an incredible route runner, but I could see them double moving him. Right, all game long, he's doing in cuts, out cuts. Those 7 to 15 yard routes, and then we get all the linebackers to suck in, the safeties to suck in off of play action, and he double moves and splits the seam, runs a 9 route or something. His speed is insane. I'm really looking forward to watching this kid. That play in camp, Justin threw a duck. Okay, that thing was all wobbling. It was behind him, and he goes up, grabs it with his hands behind. Right, he had to contort his body. Very, very impressive for a young guy. It's an interesting room. Davis, I would almost take him out of the wide receiver room and move him over to special teams, because I think he's a lock. He's the guy who's going to have the mantle with that new special teams return play. And so normally I think you'd keep 5 wide receivers. I think we're keeping 6, but I think Davis is that hybrid guy.
Yeah.
So that would leave, for me, Simi, practice squad, Cornelius, practice squad, and I love Cornelius' size and speed. I think he's really got something, but he's not going to be able to break through the current wide receiver room. And then Brendan Rice. Man, how can you not root for this guy? He's big, he's fast, he's got the body. He's an outside receiver all day long. How can you not root for this guy to make the squad in some form or another? But it's going to be tough if you've got Palmer, QJ, DJ, Ladd. Well, he might be able to make that, and then move Darius as number 6 over to.
Yeah.
All eyes are going to be on that room all preseason.
And it's going to be very exciting to watch.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because going into the draft, everybody, I mean, just everybody's wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. And I'm like, well, maybe if we can get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5, we'll take him because he's just maybe that type of generational talent. But I wasn't 100% sold on that we wouldn't, even if he was available, that we wouldn't take the tackle over him, because a wide receiver does not have the impact that a tackle does. Think about what Joe Alt is going to mean to this offense on the running game, and then the 8 seconds you talked about that they're going to try and give Justin, right? Yeah. And then to be able to hold that down for 10 years, right? It's just that the impact of that position long term is way more impactful, I believe, than a guy who can catch the ball. If Justin's running for his life, well, it doesn't matter. But if Justin's got 8 seconds, all of a sudden Simi Fehoko looks like an all-star Pro Bowl receiver because nobody can cover anybody for 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's Harbaugh and G. Rose's philosophy, which is we're just going to beat you into submission and then we're just going to throw it because you can't stop us. And so I think the talent we've got is more than enough because Justin's awesome, right? Yep. Justin can make an average receiver way above average. And if you give him 5 seconds, even 8 seconds is insane. Okay. Normally it's like 2.5 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So if you give 3 or 4, Justin's going to be picking defenses apart.
Yeah, I think if you give him that much time, he's gonna run away with it. And like you were saying previously, a generational talent like Marvin Harrison Jr., people didn't want to pass him up. But on the other side of it, though, Joe Alt is a generational talent as well. He is one of the biggest prospects and highest graded O linemen of like NFL history. So he, and this stat might be a little wrong, but within his 3 years, he only allowed roughly around 3 to 4 sacks in almost his whole collegiate career, which is really hard to do. You can say whatever you want with him being on Notre Dame and the divisions, however, or the conferences. However, I think he's gonna be very, very, very good in my opinion. He's gonna really, really establish himself as one of the very, very talented O-linemen, kind of like a Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, and then there's some guys a little before your time. Jonathan Ogden of the Ravens, Orlando Pace of the Rams. I mean, those guys were generational tackles. And I think Ogden was like 6'9" too. I mean, he's just big boy. So yeah, they're building this team a certain way. They said they were going to build it a certain way. A lot of people didn't believe what they said going into the draft. They thought it was smoke and mirrors. It's not Harbaugh, man. Harbaugh's like, I'm going to tell you I'm going to smack you, and then I'm going to smack you, and I'll smack you again, and try and stop me. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. And I think our wide receiver talent, Quentin, a lot of people forget, and I don't want to belabor this. We got the whole defense to go over too, but remember Mike Williams' rookie season and sophomore seasons?
Yep. His
rookie season was horrible.
Not the
horrible.
Great. Yeah.
It was like, it might have been worse than QJ's season. I mean, it was horrible. And if you remember when he came out of college, he had back issues, which remanifested themselves during his pro career, right? He had health issues. Same with our boy Keenan. Early in his career, Keenan missed a lot of games. And then he had that stretch there where he was an Iron Man and he just played and played and played and played. So, yeah, I don't think we want to call Quentin a bust just yet.
Yeah, it's too early for that.
He's got the size. He's got the speed. It looks like he's been working on his hands. I saw a really nice hands catch highlight coming out of practice yesterday, day 3, I believe it was. And then just to show my age real quick, and then we'll move on. a namesake of his with the same initials, QJ, in this case, Quentin Jammer.
Quinn Jammer.
Quentin Jammer. You want to talk about the best last name of a defensive back in all of NFL history. Quentin Jammer came out of Texas Longhorns. Man, that guy got burned like his rookie and his sophomore. Everybody was just, the fans wanted to lynch him. He just, I don't know what it was, but he grew into the position and he became a mainstay, and he was locked down corner. He could cover anybody, and he tackled like a mofo. I mean, So it's give this kid a chance to grow. Wide receiver is one of the hardest positions to come in as a rook. It's not like running back where it's all instinct. There's so much technique. So let's not quite, say he's anywhere near a bustlet. He needs a couple seasons under his belt, but they're giving him an opportunity, it looks like. So it'll be great to see. Why don't we go ahead and move over to the defense? Let's go ahead and start with defensive line. I was afraid this pod might run a little bit longer because we got so much to talk about. Normally I keep them to, 45 minutes to an hour. This one might go a little bit long, but that's fine. We've got a lot to cover here. Let's start with D-line. Okay, interior D-line in particular. Okay, when I was prepping for the pod, I'm like, man, we are pretty bare on the interior of our defensive line. However, once I went through it, I was like, oh, we're maybe not as bad off as I thought. We got Morgan Fox. I love Foxy. He's one of those guys. He's got a motor and he just never stops. And he's got a technique. He can get that interior push, which is deadly if you can push from the interior. And then all of a sudden you got the Bosa and Mack corralling the guy. We brought in that big body dude, Poona Ford. I've seen him flash. I don't know if he can, do it every play. We'll see. Been hearing great things from Scott Matlock out of camp. I think Harbaugh's really high on him. And then we've got this kid we drafted, is it 1 year or 2 years ago, Otita Ogbonnia out of UCLA. Man, when we brought him in, they were high on the kid, and he ended up getting injured like the last 2 years. But he's still on our roster. And then we got Chris Hinton. He played some snaps last year. And then we got the rook, who I really like, out of Georgia, Justin Boygby. So that's right now. And then I think we got a couple camp bodies, but those are the names that we've got on the interior of our line. I don't think we're as bare as I felt that maybe we were.
So I really like Poona Ford. He's from Seattle. I think he's gonna be a very good complement to our line. I do agree with it being bare before we started making some moves. Maybe like right after the 2023 season, it was looking pretty bare. But I think Scott Matlock, I'm really high on him. He's from Boise State. Seems like he's working really hard. And like you said, Harbaugh and many other coaching staff seems to be very high on him, which is a very good thing to hear. So it seems like he's really becoming the player that a lot of people thought he would become. And then Morgan Fox, like you said, I really like Morgan Fox. I think his style of play is really like complementary. I know I already said that before, but it's very complementary to our defense. He is a gritty dude, and he's a monster on the line. I would hate to line up against that dude. So it's our interior lineman, like you said, seems bare from the outside, but if you really do a deep dive into them, it's a little better well off than a lot of people from the outside believe.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not too often you get Aaron Donalds, right? Which are these stud interior linemen. That brings me back to our early Charger days, where we had, why does his name escape me? He's just absolute beast on the interior of the line. All of our linebackers, he freed them all up. It'll come back to me, and I'm sorry if you're watching because you were our defensive line back in the day. Those stud interior nose tackle defensive linemen, they do all the dirty work. So linebackers can do their jobs, and the edge rushers can do their jobs. But it looks like we've got some talent here, more than I thought we did. And, watch out for this kid at Boygby, Rook. I think he's got a motor on him. You pair him up on supposed passing downs with Morgan Fox, and then you've got our studs, which we're going to go to the edge next. This D-line could be crazy. Bosa, Mack, Tooley, Bud Dupree, and then, don't forget, we got this kid that, he maybe hasn't turned into a household name yet by the name of Chris Rumph. And then, again, we've got some rooks and some second-year guys, but those are the name brands, and I think those will be the name brands. Bosa, Mack, Tooley, Bud Dupree, and Chris Rumph. I think that'll be that room when it's all said and done.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really good D linemen. This is D-line rooms in the NFL. This is going to be a very biased opinion, but if you look at the names and what they have already accomplished, it looks like the best, outside, linebacker room on the edge, the best edges you will see, in the NFL, best room, because Bud Dupree, he was a monster. He's always been a monster. He's always been one of those names, Bud Dupree, Bud Dupree. He's a very good veteran that can give very good insight to, who I'm going to say, Tui Tuipulotu. Very, very high upside, was a monster already last year, kind of took over some of the games that Joey and Khalil were in, because Joey's been dealing with a lot of injuries. But then you go to Khalil Mack, who's been an MVP. Everywhere he's been, he's had high numbers, and he had his best sack season, and I think either was one under or tied the record for most sacks in a game. And this was his one of. So from the outside perspective, you would think he would be declining from his age. However, it seems like he's only getting better. So that's very scary to see, as well as Joey Bosa, who, when healthy, is always someone you can never just put aside. He's going to run at you, and he will get the sack if you don't block him correctly. So I think those four are going to be very, very scary to see on the field. Like you said, they're going to be the highlighted players of the line for sure. And then Chris Rumph, the team seems to really like him. He gets a lot of media presence, and so I think he's really putting in the effort and work. I think he's trying very hard to become a key member of this team, and I've seen a lot of flashes with him, but with how much talent we have, I just don't see it happening within the next 1 or 2 years until, I hate to say it, but until all the players we do know and love leave and either retire or go to a different team. Just too much star power for him to really become a star. But with that being said, I think that gives us a lot of depth to work with.
Well, and that's a key, especially with Bosa's history.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't miss a lot of time, he's going to miss some snaps here, some snaps there, a half a game here. Unless Ben Herbert gets him into shape, which I'm hoping, fingers crossed, he's really letting Herbert work on some of those things that his previous trainer hasn't, for whatever reason, been able to keep him off the injury list. So it's a crazy rotation. And if you've got two of those five, because I think Chris Rumph will stay on the team.
Yeah.
They need the depth. Guy goes out. I mean, Bosa's out, Thule's in. You know,
Yeah.
Bosa's out, Bud's in. Bud's out, Chris is in. You've got some studs there that if you just keep that rotation fresh, that could be really dangerous.
Yeah.
To have that kind of talent and that kind of depth.
Yes.
So, and I really like to see Joey play like a full 17-game season. And if he doesn't have to play all these snaps, he might be able to pull it off, right?
Yeah.
If he keep him fresh and rotate these other guys in, that's one of the things I'm really going to keep my eye on this season is Joey.
Yeah.
Khalil, he just seems to be built different.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he just is, the guy's built. So I'm not too worried about him coming off, even if he's injured. The guy's just built. And Thule, there's so much to be excited about this kid.
Yeah.
He's really going to blossom. He's got these mentors in Bosa and Mac to really just help him reach what his full potential is. So it's a really cool room. I think it's going to be probably the strength of our defense by far.
Yeah.
Again, if a quarterback doesn't have time to throw the ball, then the defensive backs don't have to cover very long, do they?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, I agree with that one.
Yeah. Linebackers. Let's talk linebackers. This is an interesting dynamic we've got going on here. The guys I've got as our locks at this point are Daiyan Henley, Junior Colson, Denzel Perryman. I really was high on I was really high on Henley coming out of college last year. He's a third-round pick. Thule was second-round pick, and really liked the kid. He never really saw the field because of who we had in front of him, but I think he's a lock to be a starter. And then Junior Colson, I think, was the lock to be the other starter, but he just had his appendix removed, and I don't know what the time frame is that he's back to 100% being able to do everything. So right now, Denzel Perryman is kind of slated to be that guy, depending on when Colson comes back, and could be worse. Then Denzel, I was watching him on Houston. He's still balling. He's got game, and he's definitely a thumper, which fits this defense. And then the guys I see who are, I don't want to call them bubble-ish, because I don't know if there's a bubble here. There's just not too many names. They may need every body. Troy Dye and Nick Niemann. Now Dye, where did we get him from?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, and he's an ex-Duck, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
played
he
with
won
Justin.
the Pac-12 championship with Herbert, actually.
Yeah. And it's my understanding we really brought him in as linebacker depth and special teams.
Yep.
So I think he's going to stay on the team for his special teams needs. And I think Neiman's been a special teamer as well. So, and then we've got some camp bodies in there. Junior was the only linebacker that we drafted. So it's an interesting room there. Love to hear your insights on these guys.
Yeah, so I actually would prefer them to start Denzel over Junior Colson for the first couple games, only because there's so much upside to Denzel. Number one, we drafted him. He was with us for many years. Number two, like you said, on Houston, he was showing still that he was not going to slow down. I watched a lot of his highlights and actually made a highlight reel when we re-signed him, and I got a lot of insight on his game as of recently, and he still hits really hard. He's really aggressive, and it seems like his age isn't really a factor at the moment because he's still running fast and still has that energy that we know Denzel brings on the field. Daiyan Henley, he's he's going to be our main guy. Hopefully he can live up to it. I have seen some things of him and some flashes. Like you said, he didn't really play too much last season, but I think he can blossom into a really great player. It just shows that if they're putting full trust in him to become one of the starters, then he must be showing some good flashes. Troy Dye, they brought him to specifically be a special teamer. Minnesota, he was a primary special teamer, great tackler, great blocker on special teams. And preseason a couple years ago, he actually did get a pick six. So he does have some field awareness. So if someone gets injured, we need depth with the linebacker. He can definitely fill that need. And Nick Nemeth, he's been on our team for a couple years. I feel like he's definitely a special teamer as well. However, he's made some pretty good plays for us. I've seen a couple fumbles and interceptions that he's made for us that has actually been some key plays for a game in the regular season. So we can show some flashes. Like I said, I think he is just depth. And then, the locks, like you were referring to, are definitely Colson, Perriman, and Henley. Those are going to be your main guys when you see linebackers on the field.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we get Junior back. You know, obviously they're really high on the kid as maybe even being the green dot, right?
Yeah.
Just because he knows that defense so well.
Yeah, Jesse Minter in Michigan. Forgot to mention that. That's a big highlight for him. Is he knows the scheme Minter's going to run. He knows the scheme his head coach is going to run. So it's like he's already been with us for a year or two because he's played with the coaches for his whole collegiate career.
Exactly. It's like he's a veteran.
Yeah.
Even though he's not, but he's got a health setback here that I don't know when he's going to come around.
Yeah.
And my hunch would be that they'll, knowing how Harbaugh works, they'll probably, out of an abundance of caution, not rush him back.
Yeah.
And so it may turn out that what you're thinking happens anyway, which is Denzel gets the first couple starts.
Yeah.
And they start mixing Junior in. When they got Denzel, they were pretty clear about why they got him. They got him as depth, and they got him for veteran leadership. And they also got him for culture, as far as that thumping, mindset. And then, he's a throwback Charger. I mean, he was a San Diego Charger, right? He's one of the few, Joey and him, I think.
Yeah, that's Chargers. It was Joey until we re-signed Denzel.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of good reasons to sign him, and it was my understanding, listening to Ortiz, that when he became available, or maybe it was Mentors, one of the two, they're like, he's going to be a Charger.
Yeah.
Okay, it was like, we're going to go get Denzel.
Yeah.
And so he's got a place on this team, but I don't think they necessarily planned for him to be a starter. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works out there. Let's roll on safeties, man. Our safeties, Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, those are the locks as far as starting safeties. But we've also got Tony Jefferson, who we signed in the offseason out of retirement, who's an old Raven and I believe an old Cardinal. JT Wood, who we were high on this kid when we drafted him a few years back. And then AJ Finley, and then a couple rooks. What's your take on this room?
So, I'm wearing his jersey. One of my favorite players, Derwin James. I think he is going to be the epitome of our defense, actually. He is, the past couple years, I feel like it's slowed a little down. I feel like that's mainly because of some injury he was dealing with, and my main factor was Brandon Staley. I really feel like, Staley tried to make Derwin James his main defensive factor. However, he never used them right. Was never able to use him in the right manner. For instance, his first couple years, he was regarded as top 1 and 2 safeties in the NFL with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I think it's dropped a little bit, but I think he's been really, really hungry again. He's been working on the little things that will separate him from being just like, and yeah, he's really good to a elite safety again. So I think he's going to be really good. Alohi Gilman, I love the dude. I think he's one of the most consistent safeties in the league as of right now when it comes to when he plays the same way. He plays hard. He plays with his heart. And when he covers you, I feel like he's a very smart player, and he's like super glue. He's very, very tight on coverage. And then A.J. Finley and J.T. Wood, we were very high on them both. I think they aren't living up to the expectations as of recently, and that's kind of an obvious factor there. However, I think if you give them a couple more, maybe 1 or 2 more years under the veterans Derwin James and Alohi Gilman, and get them some reps with this new era we're coming into with Harbaugh and Jesse Minter on the defensive side, I think they'll be able to blossom to be some good depth and some good role players. And of course, last but not least, Jefferson. I think he's a LA hometown boy. He really wanted to play with us. Whether he's going to live up to what he was as a player out of retirement, number one, I think he's going to be great for team chemistry. You're not going to be able to win Super Bowls if you don't click with your team. And then number two, just adding that veteran aspect. He's played many games. He's played with multiple teams, and he is an older player, so he's going to have some good insights for Derwin, for A.J. Finley, for J.T. Wood. So I think the safeties aren't going to be talked about as much, only because we don't need to, because they're going to be guys that are soldiers on the field. They do what they're supposed to do, and they're so consistent that we already expect them to do what they're already going to be doing, which is killing it on the field.
Well, that's what I've always loved. Okay, I was raised in the days of Rodney the Hitman Harrison. You don't, and Ronnie Lott, of course, and you don't come over the middle. Okay,
Yeah.
In the old NFL, you take your life into your own hands if you come across the middle. The new NFL is like you can't breathe on the guy, and so obviously, as you were talking, Brennan, I had a vibe on Alohi that I'd never really thought of before. He reminds me of a young Eric Weddle. When Eric Weddle first got into the league, he's undersized, right? He's not that big thumper. And his first couple of years, he was still kind of feeling it out. You could tell he had, something special about him. Alohi's kind of grown into that too. He's kind of cerebral, but he's also physical. I think his best days are ahead of him still.
Yep.
When Jesse Minter brings Derwin down into the box, who's going to be the third safety? Who do you think's coming in as the third safety? Of the guys that are currently on the roster.
Yeah, so I think, honestly, it could be Jefferson if he keeps his same pace. Like I said before, I feel like a big thing for coaches is if you put him on the field, he's going to know what to do. He's had different defensive schemes where he can adapt to that scheme, and if one of them gets injured out of nowhere, he can just go and play safety. He will know what to do. He's played it before against some high-level guys. And so I think he has an obvious chance. But a dark horse, I really think it could be A.J. Finley. A.J. Finley is a really good player that I think people are overlooking. They can call me crazy, but I've watched a lot of highlights from him in college and early in preseason, and he can really blossom into a good player. I feel like with circumstances with Brandon Staley and having already established safeties, he hasn't been able to be able to fill that void. However, if there is a third safety, I think AJ Finley can really be a good addition.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that. I think the odd man out, depending on how many safeties they keep, is JT Woods. I think he's almost kind of run out of, they've given him a long rope, and I think he's probably the odd man out unless he flashes here during preseason, unless they keep 5.
Yeah.
But if they're keeping 4, I'll put Finley over JT Woods. And I was really high on Woods coming out of college because he was a baller, man. He was a ball hawk.
Yeah.
But I don't want to badmouth Brandon Staley, but his scheme was too complicated, and guys were thinking too much and not playing enough, and they were always out of position. I mean, how many just completely broken coverages did we have over the last couple of years where everybody's looking at each other as the other team's going for a touchdown? And then Jefferson, last thing I'll add about him is he played in a similar scheme with the Ravens, right? Jesse Mentor's got a version of that scheme, just like Mike McDonald, who's now head coach Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. And so Tony knows the scheme. And so maybe he's a little bit older. Maybe he has lost a step. But those veteran guys, they make up that lost step because they think 2 steps ahead, and so they can still be there in time, especially when you've got some range in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
So I would say JT Woods the odd man out at this point if they only keep 4, for sure. D-backs, our defensive backs. Again, I'm kind of like our defensive line. I was prepping for the pod, and I'm like, man, this is pretty thin. It's not as thin as I thought, but we've got Asante Samuel Jr. We brought in Christian Fulton from the Titans, I believe.
Yep.
Very talented coming out of college. He's just had some injury issues, I think, has been his main thing. And then we've got Dean Leonard, who's been with us a couple seasons now. Jasir Taylor, who's been with us a couple seasons now. A couple late-round picks in Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart. And then we've got some camp bodies, those undrafted free agent signings that are playing. I haven't heard of any of those guys flashing yet. And what's interesting, too, is now's a good time as any to mention the Chargers are notorious. Antonio Gates, Austin Eckler. A lot of people forget we signed what was his name? The short receiver that ended up being Peyton Manning and Tom Brady's receiver for years. Wes Welker. We had him on our roster, and we cut him after week 1. And then look what he became, right?
Yeah.
It just killed me. I'm watching this kid, and I'm like, oh, don't cut him. And they cut him, and then he becomes Wes Welker. So we have a history of signing 1 or 2 really stud unrestricted, undrafted free agents. I haven't heard any rumblings about any of those guys yet. That's one of the things I'm going to be looking for in camp is, do we have one of those guys who's really flashing?
Yeah.
But that's our defensive back room. Give me your thoughts on that one, man.
So Asante, he's really good. I think he's lost like a little bit of a step last year. But I hate to bring up this game because it's a big heartbreak, but that Jaguars game, he blossomed in that game in the first half. He picked off Trevor Lawrence 3 times.
Right.
And that's very hard to do to a quarterback, especially someone like Trevor Lawrence, who has that talent. So Asante Samuel is really good. I think they're going to be throwing it to the opposite side a lot because I think he's going to try to prove himself being like, okay, I was good, and then you guys said I lost a step, so I really want to blossom to the player that everybody says I can be. And like, everybody probably compares him to his father and his NFL career, so he's probably wanting to prove a lot of people that way. Christian Fulton, I'm really high on the dude. I feel like he's the same way as J.K. Dobbins in the sense with they just can't catch a break with getting injured. However, when they are on the field, they show signs of being elite on their position. They can be a very, very good weapon for our team. So Christian Fulton, if he stays healthy, keeps his mind right, I think he's going to be very good. Leonard is a depth piece that I really like. He's been pretty involved actually in the defensive back scheme, it seems like, when it comes to depth-wise. So in being a role player, I think he's going to be pretty good as well. And I think those are the main three. Jasir Taylor, he's played a couple games as well where he's been able to step up and not really blow coverage, which I think that's a main thing. If you can step up and just not blow the coverage, you're doing your job at the end of the day. But my last thing is I'm really highlighting Tarib Still and Cam Hart. They're showing really good signs in the training camp already. I think based off college, they have a really big upside, especially because we don't have too much depth. We got a couple pieces, but we don't got too much depth where one of them can easily take Christian Fulton's spot. We don't know how he's going to perform, so they can easily take it over, especially Cam Hart. He seems like he's a ball hawk and very aggressive. So those two in camp and in preseason are two players that I really think people need to watch out for because they're going to shock a couple people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that at all. I think both of those guys have a chance to make the roster, not be going to the practice squad.
Yeah.
Tarhib was making a really good name for himself in OTAs, and then Cam's had a couple flashes here in the first couple days of camp. Jasir, he's had his moments as well, and Dean Leonard's just kind of he's one of those guys. He just comes to work and does his job, right? Yep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's a good thing with a cornerback because most of the time when you're highlighted, it's because you just got burnt. You know, and so he just comes in and kind of holds down his spot. Tell me when we go to like nickel package, if Fulton's staying healthy, Asante's doing his thing, who's the third guy coming in? If we don't sign anybody else, if this is our room.
This might be a bold prediction, but I genuinely think it could be Cam Hart. If not, Tarhib Still. I feel like it's going to be one of those rookies. I feel like they're really energized. I think they're not stupid. They know the position they're in compared to any other team. Our team being a rookie cornerback on the Chargers is one of the best things you could do because of the depth. We only got relatively Asante Samuel, who we know that can produce those big plays. However, Christian Fulton's in the air. Leonard is always in the air. Jasir Taylor's always in the air because they can do their job, like you said. However, they're depth for a reason, and they're not star players for a reason. Exactly. So I feel like Cam Hart could be that third guy. If not him, Tarhib Still for sure. One of those two definitely could be the third guy, in my opinion.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Tarhib. He's a big boy too, right?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of height and length to him. And I believe speed. I think he was a 4.4 guy coming out of school.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's an opportunity, 100%, like you said, there's an opportunity here for one of these two rooks to come in right away. And they're later round picks, come in and make a name for themselves. I mean, besides Asante, everything's up for grabs. And with Asante, I don't think he's lost a step at all. Yeah, the outside looking in maybe says he does. But again, I'm putting that on Brandon Staley. Yeah. Brandon's scheme had these guys thinking more than playing. Yeah. And Asante still did what he did most of the time. It's my understanding the way Mentor's coming in is this scheme is going to be simplified. It's going to look complex to offenses, but it's going to be super simplified for the players.
Yep.
And so he's going to free them up to play football and not overthink it. So I'm looking forward to Asante having maybe his best year in this new scheme. And Derwin, this is going to be a rebirth for Derwin. I remember cussing so many times last season at Derwin because he committed a stupid penalty. He was out of position, and that was because Derwin was thinking and not playing. But at the time, I didn't realize it, and I'm like, oh, my God, what's happened to Derwin? He's like, he forgot how to play football.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to be looking at a rebirth of some of this talent, and some of these young kids come in and take to that scheme. Watch out. They start making names for themselves. That's a room to keep an eye on for sure. To me, that's kind of like wide receiver room.
Yeah.
On the offense, the DB room is the one to keep an eye on for the defense, for sure. And then there's not a lot to talk about here, but last but not least is special teams.
Yep,
that's a lock.
Yeah, pretty obvious. It's going to be punter, J.K. Scott, kicker, you got as Cam Dicker, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure our long snapper is Harris.
It's Josh Harris. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I was right on that. Those guys are locks, and then punt and kick returner is, like we said earlier, 99.9% Darius Davis.
Yeah. And so I think all those guys, they're not penciled in. They're in ink.
Yeah.
They're on the depth chart. They are who they are. The Chargers, again, the long snapper's been a position we have always been blessed with, going all the way back to David Benn in those days, John Carney, all those guys. We had a period there where our kicking game went to crap. But historically, going all the way back to Rolf Benershka, we had been blessed with quality, consistent kickers. Even Nate Kading, the kid couldn't kick one in the playoffs to save his life, but in regular season, he was money.
Yeah.
We've got a pretty solid Dicker. Man, that kid is awesome. Great attitude, and he's money. The kid is money. He got ice in his veins. He's not a money badger. This kid's the true deal. So let's wrap this thing up. One last roster kind of related thing here. I want to get your opinion on what areas do you think we still have the most need? And as we head to the tail end of training camp and teams start doing their cut downs, what position is going to have the highest probability that we're going to sign one of those other team vet cut downs because they have to cut their roster, and we're like, oh, this guy's a vet. He's going to fill our, what positions are you looking at, Brennan?
So, as of right now, we just spoke about them, but I feel like DB is definitely something to look for. I feel like we just need to add one more key piece to that. I think that's going to be a need for sure, is a DB. Cornerbacks in particular, I think they are a little watered down, like we just spoke about it. So I think one more piece that from veterans, I don't know one probably off the top of my head, but if they do start doing roster cuts, we could definitely be in the market for a key role player as a cornerback. And then jumping on the offensive side, so I personally think on the offense, what we spoke about is probably set in stone other than the wide receivers. I don't think we really need too much. Our RBs, our quarterback, our wide receivers in training camp are seeming to be shaping up to be very, very well. If anything, we could maybe use one more interior O lineman just to give a little more depth. because you can never be too sure. It seems like with the Chargers, as of recent years, we've gone through O linemen like no other. So if you could just get one more depth to the line, just to get a backup just in case, from free agency, I feel like that could be a very good decision as well.
Yeah, I think you and I are kind of on the same page there. D side of the ball, I think other than the D line, because we got more depth there than I thought we did. I would say on the defensive side, DB number one.
Yeah.
If we get somebody who's quality, they wouldn't hesitate to sign them. Safety's a possibility that we could get some additional veteran help there. And TJ Wood, maybe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Linebacker, actually, because we talked, we got the main three and the other two are really journeymen. So if they could get a quality there. And then on the offensive line or on the offensive side of the ball, the biggest need I see there is we need a backup center. You name the interior, but I'm going to even be more specific and say center. We really need a capable, not that these other guys couldn't fill in a pinch, but we really need somebody who can play all three interior positions but has actual reps at center. So if Bozeman goes down, we aren't just patching in somebody there. We're actually putting somebody there who's got reps at that, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps, not like 10 kind of fill-in reps. And then I know there's going to be a lot of, fanboys watching the show. I don't think we signed a wide receiver. I don't think we add to that room. I think that room is already more than what we need for the scheme we're going to be running. But there's going to be a lot of guys out there, Brennan. You know it. There's going to be a lot of guys out there going, we still need that stud wide receiver, the stud wide receiver. Somebody's going to be cut, and we need to go sign him. We aren't signing Brandon Ayuk, okay?
Yeah, I was going to just mention him.
Yeah, it's not happening. I mean, you can't say never, but when you look at what they're trying to build here, that is not where they're going to allocate those resources. It's just not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty much on the same page, man. I appreciate your take on what we're looking for. You've brought a couple twists that I wasn't looking at. That now I'm going to be attuned to as I'm watching practices. But yeah, that's our take, folks, on the 2024 training camp roster and position battles. Be sure to let us know what you think. Leave feedback down below in the comments section when you're on the YouTube channel. But that's it for this episode of Chargers Cast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's been fun having Brennan here with me. Brennan, thanks for joining me and sharing your thoughts. It's been great hanging out with you, and I look forward to you coming back soon. This is what Chargers Cast is all about, like we were talking about. I started this thing as a diehard Charger fan to share with other Chargers fans and hang out and talk ball and get other people's thoughts. So I appreciate you being here and hanging out with me and talking ball. We will definitely have you back soon. I hope you want to come back.
Oh, yeah. They'll definitely, Chargers Cast will definitely be seeing me a lot more. Definitely fun experience. I can talk about Charger football for hours on end, so that's nothing better than talking Charger football with other diehard fans.
Sweet. Well, hopefully we'll get an opportunity. We'll get a few more folks in here. Yeah. And who knows? Maybe we can do a Chargers Cast or 2 or 3 or many, many more where we've actually got a few fans in here. And we can kind of round table it and talk Bulls. There's nothing more fun than talking Chargers football, man. So if you are a Chargers fan and you also want to be a part of Chargers Cast, leave a comment down below or you can email or DM me. You can email me directly at chargerscast@gmail.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at chargerscast. So also, can't forget, be sure to like and subscribe below. The likes let me know you guys are enjoying this thing. Subscriptions let you guys know when we post a new pod. And also, we have some really cool Chargers merch. Be sure to go to the Chargers Cast. It's called My Chargers Merch Store. You can see the link on my Instagram, and there's also a link down below this video as well. Go check it out. There's some cool stuff out there. Got some really cool stickers and T-shirts and hoodies and all kinds of fun stuff. So go check it out. Hope you guys enjoy it. And I think we'll wrap it up, Brennan.
Awesome. Perfect.
Appreciate you being here, my friend. I'm Kirk Brewer. This is Brennan Isham.
Yes, sir.
From Chargers District. And this is Chargers Cast.